Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cutting Edge Figure Skating Podcast. My name is Kim Dunaway, and in this episode, I'm covering the pairs event at the 2024 European Championships held in Kaunas, Lithuania over this past weekend. Fantastic event, robust crowd. All of the participants were really excited and talked about how supportive the crowd was. And I can't remember if it was it was the dance event where Charlene Guinard was like, wow, a lot of people in the stands. So really a great contrast to Canadians, which was going on at the same time, that had a very, very sparsely attended crowd. So if you picked Bakari and Garizi to win this event, I hope you went out and bought a lottery ticket, because I, for one, did not see this coming at all. I thought, okay, Hasi and Volodin basically come in as the favorites. They've won everything, 2 Grand Prix final. Maybe Meltikina and Buralava because they dominated juniors and they're really senior competitors. And they have that Russian aesthetic, right? Or maybe Conti and Mishi would find that lightning in a bottle that they found last season and repeat as European champions, and none of those things happened. So not surprised that an Italian pair won, but surprised the one that it was. So let's get into the results here. The winners were Lucretia Bakari and Matteo Garizi of Italy. And they were 7th at this event last season, and they have been kind of just on the cusp all season. They've had beautiful short programs along the way that I felt like a lot of times have been underscored a bit. But what has fallen apart for them has been really in the free skate. Just a lot of mistakes on side-by-side jumping elements or a step out here on a throw where it just has not come together. And so that changed big time for them here, because their short program was lovely, as it has always been. Never really quite sure what the rain is about at the beginning. It had a little bit of level issues on some elements. So their spiral, their step sequence, and their pair spin, which keeps them, again, below 70 points, which, heck, after winning Europeans, if they can work on those things, they very well might get at Worlds. If they go to Worlds, Italy hasn't named their team yet. I think as European champions, they'll definitely be there. But even so, lovely short program. They found themselves in 3rd after the short program, behind the Georgians and behind Hasi and Volodin. And then they come out in the free skate and do the best version of this cat's free skate that we have seen this year. They landed both side-by-side jumps, both of their throws, and this is the best that this program has looked. Do I like it? No, I still don't like it, but this is the first time I was like, I don't hate it. It's amazing what skating clean can do to a program. Like, it improves everything about it. The memory section in the middle is still, in my mind, the most effective part of the program, but they really just nailed everything. They got level 4s on everything, including their twist. Didn't get perfect scores on their side-by-side jumps, but they were landed. Did not get a level 4 on their death spiral, but nobody in the entire competition could get a level 4 on their death spiral. That's a different conversation. But other than that, strong performance. Got a personal best for them, 132 points. I probably would have had them second in the free skate, if I'm being honest, but we'll talk about that in a second. But definitely were deserving of the win here. And it's a big title for them. They were 2nd at Italian Nationals. Conti and Mishi had to withdraw. They were the lone Italian team of those 3 not to make the Grand Prix final. And so I felt like they were on the outside looking in of going to Worlds, because unfortunately, Italy only has 2 spots. Remember last year they only had the 1 spot, and it was like, oh, this sucks. Now Gilardi and Ambrosini can't go. Well, now they got 2 spots, and it's like, oh, it sucks. One of these other teams is not going to be able to go. I think it'd be hard not to send the European champions. Like, I think they're going to go. And then the next question becomes, who do you send if Conti and Mishi versus Gilardi and Ambrosini? And I'll talk about that a little bit later. Second place here was Anastasia Meltekina and Luka Barava of Georgia. And so for a lot of people, this is their first time seeing this team together this season. They were on the Junior Grand Prix. So if you watch the Junior Grand Prix at all, you will have seen them skate versions of this free skate It's a little bit shorter in juniors. They have one less lift, and the program's a little bit shorter. But virtually the same. They had a big score at Warsaw Cup, their one senior competition that they did. And as I mentioned in my Challenger wrap-up season, that they were a big wild card coming into the second half of the season because they haven't been competing at the senior level with these other teams, but they have the goods to compete. They competed on the juniors because they didn't feel like they could get entries into the Grand Prix circuit, which was probably fair. We saw the same thing kind of with Diana Davis and Gleb Smolkin. They had to do challengers because they weren't going to get invites to Grand Prix events. And so here they are. They're basically kind of a super team. I mean, if you remember last season, both of these two were paired with separate partners. Anastasia with Daniel Parkman, who's now skating with Katie McBeath and competing for the U.S. We'll see him at Nationals in a couple weeks. And then Luca Barava was skating with Karina Safina last season. And so now they've come together and created the super team. And frankly, they did very well. I mean, their short program is a very different look, bright costumes, but they came out and were just so confident. They got level 4s on everything except their step sequence, that twist included, and could not really disagree with them being in first place. And so they came in to the free skate with a lead, and Hasi and Volodin had already not skated well, and so it looked like it was in the bag for them, and they had just too many mistakes in their long program. And so, first of all, can we talk about these costumes? Because they're skating to Queen, and it looks like they're either doing a folk dance or Giselle. Their costumes just don't match the music, like, at all. But she fell on their side-by-side triple sow. They had a single axel in their triple toe, double axel, double two sequence. And they also had issue on their pair spin. You could see sort of like this hesitation, during their pair spin. So they ended up getting a V on it. And so that cost them about 1.5 points or so. They also ended up with an undercall on that triple sow that she fell on. And they got negative GOE on that combination side by side. And all of those little things added up. They actually ended up 5th in the free skate and fell to 2nd overall. And they were pretty disappointed about that. They lost by 3 points. So again, you can look at any number of those mistakes that they made. So I said that the spin mistake cost them about 1.5 points. The undercall also cost them a little bit. So it was definitely there for them, just too many mistakes, but they are still very much a team that can contend for the world title. I mean, they have the goods to do it. Maybe change the costumes. There were a number of teams, the Hungarians I'll talk about here in a second, Anastasia Gubanova, who I'll talk about in the women's episode, who looked quite pissed when they didn't get the scores that they wanted. And there were lots of little insinuations that they felt like they were getting marked down unfairly for some kind of anti-Russia sentiment. And I have seen some really just outrageous Russian kind of propaganda that have come out complaining about the pairs result, the Georgians not winning. And I mean, it's all there. Like, she fell, Bakari and Garizi didn't. And so I don't quite understand where they feel like there's this conspiracy to mark them all down. I do think in general, it's hard for a non-Russian figure skating fan to root for Georgians who were born in Russia and very much feel their allegiances are still Russian. But if they go out and skate their best, like, they're going to get the scores, are going to win. They just have to skate better than what they're doing. And so I just wanted to respond. I don't agree with a lot of that kind of conspiracy theory that's kind of going around. I'm going to talk about it again. I want to talk about the Hungarians because they were also kind of very much whiny about it. I think that Meltikina and Barilava were not, but there were other media outlets that were speaking specifically to their result being second place here as some kind of greater conspiracy. All right. Third place here was Gilardi and Ambrosini of Italy. And they really had a fantastic competition. I mean, I have harped and harped all season about the side-by-side jumps, Rebecca's triple Salchow, and begging before Grand Prix final for them to do side-by-side double axels in the short program instead, which they did at Grand Prix final. They weren't great. Here, they were very strong. I thought that, again, I thought their short program was underscored. I mean, I get it. The double axles aren't worth as much as side-by-side triples, but we're talking about the difference of a point. And I thought everything else was really strong. I love that little delay that they have in that throw triple Lutz. It was just like right on the music, and I thought they were very emotive in their short program. I just thought it was really strong, and I thought 64 was kind of light. And then in their long program, she actually landed that triple Salchow. The leg wrap wasn't basically like non-existent. Like you could still see the leg wrap on the double axel, but on the triple Salchow, it was like amazing. I mean, she did end up with an undercall on it, which cost them some points, but it was like, and I think I even said on Twitter, like, oh my gosh, they just landed both of their side-by-side jumps. Like, this is going to be amazing. And I thought it was really strong. And I knew that they weren't going to get high 130s. I wanted them to get high 130s, but I thought they would get at least 135. And so when they got a 130, I was like, really? So they too got nickeled and dimed on some elements. Mainly of course, I mentioned that they got a Q call on the triple Salchow that she did, and that was an issue. But also had some issues on the death spiral. They only got a level 2. They ended up with a V on their pair spin. And so that also cost them some points here and there and prevented them from winning the free skate, which I really thought that they were going to, because I feel like their free skate is just so much more dynamic and interesting than Bakari and Garizi's are. And they did win on program components. They were first, even though the commentator was he was interesting. He was very positive for the most part. A lot of take your hats off to them. But he was like, oh, their components are a little lower than everybody else was. And actually, they were first in program components. Still probably could have been higher than what they were. But yeah, for me, they won the free skate. I thought they were fantastic. And I hope they go to Worlds. I would like to see them in Bakari and Garizi at Worlds. I just feel like what we have seen this season, they just have more dynamic programs, but I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think they're going to send Conti and Mishi, and I'll talk about why when I get to them. All right, in fourth place here was the Hungarian-Russian skaters, or sometimes I refer to them as Hungry Russians. And they were fourth, and they were super salty. So in their short program, they, again, strong technical skates, but it's the other elements in their program. They're kind of like Gabanova. I mean, you could cut and paste the comments that I make about Anastasia Gabanova's short programs, especially, and put them on to Marie and Alexei's, because it's kind of the same thing. They go out there and get a level 4 in their twists. They nail their triple toe and their throws, and then they get a level 2 on their step sequence. They get a level 2 in their death spiral. I mean, that stuff matters. Pairs do so many of the same elements in the short program. Everybody's doing the same thing. Everybody's doing a side-by-side triple Salchow or triple toe. Everybody's doing a triple twist. Everybody's doing a throw loop or a throw flip. These are all getting the same amount of points. And then your death spiral, everybody's doing the same death spiral, and your spins, your step sequence, they all have the same base value. So if you go out there and get a level 2 or a level 1, then it's going to affect your score. These are just facts. And so for all of their fussing, because after the short program, she says, and I quote, "I think we did well, but I'm not happy with the score. It's not going up. Work on your other elements in your program." Okay? Now, secondly, they're not as well developed in that second mark as a lot of these other teams are. They're a younger team. They haven't been skating together that long. Like, it takes some time to build that. And it's really evident when you compare them to the other teams, when you look program to program. Again, in their free skate, they had the number 1 technical score in the free skate, even after they lost a couple of points. So after they nailed their free skate, those technical elements, I thought, oh, well, they're going to get on the podium because their tech box said like 72 points. When their scores came up, their tech box had gone down to sub 70. So they lost about 2.5 points because they got downgraded on like 2 of their lifts. So they got a level 3 on their group 5 lift and a level 3 on their group 4 lift. They got a Q call on that double axle, even in that big triple toe, double axle sequence that they got. That cost them a little bit of points. And they only got a level 2 on their spin. Even with those mistakes, they were still number 1 in technical elements, but they still left points on the table. And I get it. They're frustrated about their PCS score. They were 6 out of the teams here, but they got higher PCS than, I think, Håkan Kunkel. If I have to go back and look and see exactly, but I mean, do they think they should be first? Or maybe it's the gap. Maybe it's the fact that, Gilardi and Ambrosini got 64 and they got, just below 59 and they feel like the gap is too much. Because again, after the long program, our motivation goes down every time we keep getting these scores. We did our best. This is our second year together and still we keep getting these scores despite giving everything that we can. Maybe our coach can talk to the judges after the competition to get an explanation. Again, you've been skating together for 2 seasons. 2 seasons. And again, maybe they look at a team like Bulgari and Carisi and like, well, this is only their second season skating together. Okay, but Matteo Carisi, this is what, his 10th time at Europeans? Like, the man is 35, has been skating forever. Like, stop comparing yourself to some of these teams that have been skating for a very long time. Like, technically, they are fantastic. But they've got to work on the other elements. The spirals, the step sequences, they got to make sure that they're getting all of the features on their lifts. And then they've got to work on the bones of their program, which are very, very bare. I think their scores are completely 100% justified. They shouldn't be getting 60 plus in program components because they're not there. And we've seen years and years of teams getting higher program components than they should just because of the country that they're from or who's coaching them or whatever. And, perhaps Russian skaters are just used to that. And they feel like when they've been scored fairly, that they've been scored unfairly. So I just think it's ridiculous to go and complain about your scores and saying that you're losing motivation because, you guys are, to me, they got 2 medals on the Grand Prix. They got to go to Grand Prix final when somebody withdrew. They were 4th at Grand Prix final. Like, they're a contender. Like, be happy with that. Be happy with the strides that you have made from last season to this season and continue to improve your craft. Okay. Moving on from the saltiness to probably the biggest surprise of the event, and that was Hasi and Volodin. And I think that they were clearly disappointed with their results here. Definitely, they were disappointed with their scores in the short program for starters because they finally got a 72 at Grand Prix final in their short program, and then here they're like below 70 again. Again, just a case where they left points on the table. 3 on the twist, 3 on the death spiral, 3 on the step sequence, places that they can do better and improve, get a higher score. And then, unfortunately for them in the long program, she turned out of her double axle, fell on their throw loop, and the big issue came on their group 5 lift. They exited early, they got it up, and then it came right back down and invalidated the lift. And, when a lift goes up, you've got to carry it, or you've got to do 3 revolutions. If you don't, then you're not going to get credit for the lift. They didn't get any features. So, and that's a big point getter. They lost like 9.5 points on that loss. And so they ended up finishing 5th overall, but 6th in the free skate. And you know what? They've been doing so well. Really, they had almost a miraculous skate at Grand Prix final because they had been dealing with sickness. They'd barely been able to practice. And I think it just probably caught up with them. It's just going to kind of catch up with you at some point. I think they're still by far and away one of the favorites to win Worlds, medal at worst. But, it happens to everybody. It came back down to earth a little bit, and we're just going to see at Worlds how they rebound from all of this. 6th place here was Conti and Messi from Italy, and if Hasi and Volodin were the biggest disappointment, this was the second biggest disappointment. They just have been I feel like kind of out of sync all year. And I think that has a lot been attributed to just the extra pressure of coming into the season as world medalists and reigning European champions. Don't think that there's been an injury that's been involved at all, but it started off with a struggle just kind of right off the bat. They were seventh after the short program. Twist was low. She stepped out of the throw loop and she stepped out of the triple sal. Their spins were out of sync. It just wasn't their best performance. And so they were 10 points out of the lead. But again, not crazy for them to get on the podium with a strong free skate. But in the free skate, just again, underwhelming, not the best that we have seen them do this season. And it wasn't an issue like Hasi and Volodin where they had like multiple errors. It just wasn't up to the quality that they're capable of. And again, just nickeled and dimed. The twist, like I mentioned, it's been an issue all season. Very little GOE on that element. And only a level 3 when you've got other teams that are getting level 4 on that element. And you're not getting a lot of GOE, losing a lot of points there. Their triple toe, double axle combo, he singled, or she singled, one of them singled the axle in between, and they got a Q call on that second double axle, and they ended up with a V on their final spin as well. And so, and again, just a lot of their elements, not a lot of GOE on it. And so, while they ended up fourth, and I think they were happy with their skate, 125 points is not where they need to be, especially to try to move up. Like, this is a team that has the ability to score in the 130s, and we just haven't seen it this season. But what I will say is this total has been the lowest total that they've had all season. Of the 3 Italian teams, they're the only team that scored over 200 points, and they've scored over 200 points on 3 occasions. And because from my understanding, what Italy takes into account for selection for the world's team is their 4 highest scores. And so they don't compare scores from event to event. They take their 4 highest scoring events, which is interesting. But if you're looking at that criteria, well, Conti and Messi get in even over Beccari and Garisi, because Beccari and Garisi won here without even breaking 200. And so Conti and Messi have the highest combined points of all 3 teams. So, which makes, again, a very, very difficult to leave them off. And they were second at Grand Prix final, which is a big event. I don't know how much you take into account last season's results when you have this season's results. But even though they were the 3rd finishing Italian team here at 6th place overall, they definitely have the resume that warrants them a spot based on the criteria that they have established. So based on that, it looks like they'll get in. And then the decision becomes between Gilardi and Ambrosini and Beccari and Garisi. And I think it's very, very difficult to leave off the European champions. Even though Gilardi and Ambrosini are the national champions on that international stage, I mean, I just don't see how you could leave out the European champions. So I think it's most likely that we're going to see Sarah and Marco and Lucrezia and Matteo, brain fart there, get that spot. And so we'll see, but that's kind of what I'm expecting at this point. So moving on from Conti and Messi to number 7, we had Annika Hawk and Robert Kunkel of Germany. And they have, they've been injured. They've unfortunately had to withdraw from Grand Prix final. They haven't been on the ice just a whole lot of time back since then. So they just kind of had a little bit of a rocky road here in the past couple of months. And they just basically didn't have that magic that they've had at points this season. Now, a lot of the issues that they had here were some of the same issues that they've had all season, which really haven't had anything to do with an injury, to my knowledge. And that's Annika having problems with that side-by-side triple sal. So she's either doubled it or fell on it. And most of their outings that I can recall this season, and it was no different here, she doubled that sal count in the short program. and that just immediately put them behind the eight ball. And so they were coming from behind, which frankly isn't that uncommon for them. I mean, they're often coming from behind. I mean, Skate America was kind of that rare moment when they won the short program. That was with the fall. But and then in the and then the free skate, where at times they have really used this program to really propel them up in the standings. And again, it just did not happen. She once again doubled the Salchow. He singled the double axel. They're a little forward on the triple flip. I thought their first lift, which they usually do so well, love the exit out of it. I thought that was a little slow. And so unfortunately for them, they actually lost a spot and moved down to seventh place. So I know they were very disappointed. Hopefully at Worlds they can have a span of being healthier longer and can have a better showing. And eighth place here was Danilova and Seba of the Netherlands. And they didn't have a great short program. He did a double sow in the short program, and that they also had they were a little rough on that triple flip too, and so that put them way down in 10th in the standings. They did have a better free skate. They were 8th in the free skate to move up to 8th overall. She messed up the triple sow in that one, and then he singled the first double axel, so they were just kind of trading side-by-side mistakes in both programs. They had such a great outing at their second Grand Prix, and it was so nice to sort of see things come together a little bit more for them. So it felt like a little bit of a regression, like back to their normal selves at this particular Grand Prix, and it's too bad because I enjoy both of their programs so much, and at Worlds I want to see, more of what we saw at NHK Trophy and a little less of what we saw here. All right, and ninth place was the British team of Vapinlaw and Digby, and they worked so hard last season to just get to the World Championships, and they got their tech minimums, they already had them from last year's, and so they didn't have that stress going into this season. And this is by far and away the best that we have seen them do internationally. Their short program was really strong for them. They hit all of their jumping elements. And then at the very end, it's just kind of like they ran out of steam a little bit on their spiral and on their spin. But they were so happy because, they were 8th after the short program, which was great for them. Rougher free skate. Unfortunately, I love the choreography of their long program. Like I love the music, like the Survivor cover from the 2WEI. We've seen a couple times. We've seen that from like Gracie Gold, and then we saw Lou and Mitrofanoff use it. I think they use it more successfully than what Lou and Mitrofanoff did a couple years ago. I love that they start like with the death spiral instead of like using it for filler. I think both of their triple toes were rough. Hers a little worse than his. They were really missing unison on their side-by-side axles as well. And she put her hand down and stepped out of the throw loop. And they just do a double Salchow later in the program. They had like a rough exit out of her lift. So just like a lot of little things. I did like the little mini rotational lift they sort of do as part of their choreo sequence. I always love those little nods to ice dance that some of the pair skaters add. But overall, like I said, fantastic finish for them. Getting in the top 10 was really big for them. And then in 10th place here was a Polish team, and I'm probably going to butcher this name, Czechtanina and Wozniak. And I thought they had, in their short program, a nice twist. Like she put her hand down on the triple toe and double footed the throw. But I thought, it was an interesting costume. Like she had like this hot pants and like a mesh top, and it just kind of stood out in a way. And then in the long program, again, just technical issues, like on the side-by-side triple toe, he fell. The throw triple flip was a little rough, but I thought she really fought for that triple Salchow later in the program, and I like to see that fight. So they were kind of a nice team, and Poland's not a team that you think of when you think about pair skating, and so I was excited to see them, finish in the top 10. For my Pamchenko award, I've got 2. So Bakari and Garizi, obviously for the free skate, even though it's still the Cats free skate, I got to give it to him for landing everything and just skating pretty lights out. And then I also got one for Rebecca Gilardi, who has been awful, frankly, in her side-by-side jumps all season, all last season, and just really a champion here to land them in a big time moment. And yeah, so 2 Pamchinkos for pairs. All right, that's it for my pairs coverage. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. You can find me on all the socials at Ice Skate Podcast. If you feel inclined, I'd love it if you could leave a review for the podcast. That just helps other people be able to find it and move it up a bit in the podcasting algorithms, or however all that works. All right, guys, have a good rest of your week. Bye. Oh,